Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So for the final time for the 2025-2026 regular season, you get Commanders Nightly News. It's been one hell of a season. Started with a bang, ended with a whimper, but this press conference that we're going to really base this last episode off of gives me hope that the next time you see Commanders Nightly News, we will be back on our bullshit, our best bullshit. We'll be on our worst behavior, talking crazy, just like we were last year, with all kinds of optimism going into next season, because our general manager is talking with some sense. He's got his head on his shoulders. We gonna be all right. So we're gonna get to what was said today at the end of the season press conference by head coach Dan Quinn, but more importantly, general manager Adam Peters. And then later in the show, Commanders released some information today about some future moves. And also we got our official 2026 opponents. So we'll take a look at that, all of that and more later on in the show. And any comments that you guys have, we will get to later on in the show. But let's not delay. Let's get straight to the proceedings this evening. Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, end of the season presser was 36 minutes long. I thought it was really informative. I thought you saw a very candid Adam Peters that you could tell this season definitely took a toll on him. And what we have to remember, and I'm guilty of this too sometimes, and I've been very adamant that you're going to see a different Adam Peters approach this offseason. I've been adamant he's not going to go out here and get a bunch of old one-year aging veteran contracts and players that aren't going to be a part of our future. Because, again, last season was different. The vibe was different. Everything that we were doing was different. This year, the process is back on track, right? As I've said this to you many times, it's one of my favorite new quotes. As a wise man once told me, success is a distraction from the process. We were distracted last year, and we were happily distracted. None of us said, oh, no, don't go to the NFC Championship game. Don't have Super Bowl aspirations this offseason. Don't go out and get veteran players that we think can help put us over the top. None of us said that. Okay? We all wanted this team to do whatever they thought was in the best interest of this team to push us over the top. And whether you're Derek B., who doesn't think that they went all in last year, or you're a fan like myself who feels like they went all in within reason, your all in and his all in and my all in and somebody else's all in may all totally look different. I didn't blame him for not spending top dollar on DeMarcus Lawrence. What was DeMarcus Lawrence going to do for us? Wasn't giving him the contract Seattle gave him. Good for him. I'm glad he got the money that he got with the Seattle Seahawks. We didn't need to give him that money so he could come here and get 4.5 sacks, to come here and get 5 sacks. Great. We got the same production. We got that from a guy that's probably making $3.5 million in Jacob Martin. I don't even know if Jacob Martin's making that much money. We didn't need to pay DeMarcus Lawrence that kind of money. Adam Peters said a lot of things today that made sense, that is what I've been saying is probably, and I couldn't confirm this, and I've said this, we're going to find out a lot about Adam Peters this offseason. I've already made the declaration that he's going to spend this offseason, and he's going to spend on younger players heading into their prime. I told you, I think it's going to look a lot like year one when he showed up here and gave out multi-year contracts to guys going into their primes, and less like the distracted version of Adam Peters from last year, who gave out a bunch of one-year deals to aging veteran players that he thought could help put us over the top. And he said as much at this press conference. You could tell this season took a toll on him. And I just got distracted from what I was about to say, which is Adam Peters, this is his first time being a general manager. This is the first time of him sitting in this chair, making these decisions, making mistakes, learning from said mistakes, getting things right, then thinking that this is the way to go about it, and then having, negative reinforcement, and then realizing that it doesn't work that way sometimes, right? These are the trials and tribulations. These are the ups and downs. These are the peaks and valleys about doing something for the first time. He's learning. And sometimes it's easy to lose sight of the fact that he's learning. And he admitted as much. And I love that transparency from Adam Peters. This season kicked his ass, as it kicked all of our asses. But as DQ has said throughout this tumultuous season, don't get your ass kicked in vain. Take some lessons from the ass whoop that you're getting and apply them to future situations so that you don't find yourself back in this spot again. And Adam Peters sounds like a man that took in this ass whoop and said, I'm not going to make the same mistakes that I made this time around. I'll be smarter the next go round. So let's get into what was said, and we will, I guess the easiest way to do it is to just go through the press conference. And if the question is for both of them, hit it on both sides. If it doesn't pertain to, Dan Quinn or Adam Peters, just fit it in somewhere, because most of this is Adam Peters. There's a few things that Quinn said that I thought was pertinent enough to make mention of, but most of the notes that I took from the press conference came from Adam Peters, and most of the questions from this press conference, as you would assume, because they talked to Dan Quinn damn near every day, hadn't talked to Adam Peters since the trade deadline, basically. They were asking him the bulk of the questions, the vast majority of the questions. So the first question that I thought was of note for Adam Peters was, did he have regret on the Terry McLaurin contract negotiations, and did he think that it had an impact on the season? And he basically said, look, man, mistakes were made on both parts, on both sides, right? Like, if we had it over to do again, I think both of us would have done things a little bit differently. He said, on my end, I know I would have started these negotiations a lot sooner. And if I could go back and do it over again, I would have gotten this thing done a lot faster. Had this thing done prior to camp basically getting underway and not having it linger as long as it did. Like he said, both sides were guilty of mistakes. No one is innocent in that whole situation. And he basically said, I learned a lot from that. And you damn right that whole situation affected Terry this season. And there's no doubt about it. Like, Terry has been a guy that's been healthy his entire career, basically. And then you get him in a contractual situation where he misses basically all the camp. And then 3 weeks later, he has a quad injury. No one's going to believe that didn't have anything to do with him not playing all summer, basically, not practicing, not being a part of this team. And you can work out on your own, but there's no way to replicate actual football reps, which he wasn't getting. So he basically said, yeah, my bad, my fault. I'll be better moving forward. He then was asked about the positions on this roster that need improvement. And I love this quote. I love this quote. Now he's speaking my language, right? He said, quote, a few spots where we can improve and get young, really fast, exciting, explosive talent, close quote. Once again, he's on positions of improvement on this roster. He didn't get into specifics on this particular answer. He did, however, specify a position, not too long thereafter. But in this particular quote, he said, quote, "A few spots where we can improve and get young, really fast, exciting, explosive talent," close quote. And like, I don't think it requires vivid imagination on our part to figure out what position groups he's referring to. The first of which is edge rusher. Like, we're not a fast defense. So edge rusher is one of those positions. I would think running back would be another one of those positions. I would think wide receiver would be another one of those positions. I'd be looking at safety as another one of those positions. So there's plenty of positions that applies to. Linebacker would be another one. But edge rusher is the one that just pops off the charts. And then he would go on to say, another question, a follow-up question was asked by David Aldridge about what are you looking for on the defensive side of the football? What positions are you looking to upgrade? And he flat out said pass rush. We need to add a pass rusher. We would argue as a fan base, you probably need to add multiple pass rushers, but at least there's an acknowledgement that what we have now is not nearly good enough. And then you got guys coming off of injury, so you don't even know when those guys are going to be back. So he definitely specified pass rush as a position that he says they're excited about in free agency as well as the draft. I'm hoping my guy's there at 7, but again, we'll see what ultimately plays out. As we bounce around to Dan Quinn, he was asked about examining all the coordinators on his staff, which would include himself, Cliff Kingsbury, and L to the Izzo. And he said, look, we're now in the space of examining everyone's performance this year, figuring out how we can be better, how he likes digging into that space. He's basically said that, when you have the season they had, obviously some things didn't go right, and you have to assess everything and figure out how you can be better moving forward. And like, we know that they're not making any changes to the staff. No, I don't think there are going to be any real major changes. The only change that could take place, and I still believe DQ wants to call this defense, would be defensive coordinator. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think he's going to go outside the box with a defensive coordinator hire if he should go that direction. It's not going to be one of these young defensive coordinators that gets you excited. It's going to be one of these retread guys. And not that a Jim Schwartz wouldn't get me excited. They fired Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland. I would be excited about Jim Schwartz. I thought that the Arizona defensive coordinator this year, 34 years old, he'd be perfect for this job. I don't see Dan Quinn going. That's outside the box thinking. I don't see him going outside the box with this hire, right? To me, he strikes me as a guy that would more so go get a Raheem Morris. And I know some of you guys love Raheem Morris, and you would be absolutely fine with that. That's not my cup of tea. But DQ was asked, what is he looking for in new coaches? And he basically said, guys that are teachers. And I don't know how I feel about that answer. That's, I guess, the technical answer. Yeah, you want guys that are teachers, of course. But when I think of coaches that are teachers, I don't think of innovators. I think of old school coaches who are great guys that are fun to be around, but are you actually going to get the results you're looking for? I want one of these X's and O's gurus is what I'm looking for. Somebody that knows the game in and out. And again, Raheem Morris actually checks that box. He's a very smart guy. He's coached on both sides of the football. I want someone that understands offensive football as a defensive coordinator. How do you know what to take away? Well, you got to know offensive ball to know where to position your players in order to have success against this particular offense or that particular look. And vice versa. I want an offensive coordinator who is well-versed in what defenses are doing so that you can pick them apart. And when I hear teacher, I think of offensive line coaches when I hear teacher. I don't think of defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator when I hear teacher. I think of like a positional coach. That's a teacher. Not looking for a teacher as my coordinator. That's why you got positional coaches. I want a nerd as my coordinator. I want a guy that eats, sleeps, and breathes offensive or defensive football. Anyway, I digress. Back to Adam Peters. He put an emphasis on getting faster and younger. What have I told you this entire end of the season as we were going through this horrible stretch as the old narrative continued to grow legs, get stronger and more annoying, but there was no denying it. We were the oldest roster in football, but most of the guys that were injured weren't old players. Zach Ertz didn't get hurt until the end of the season, right? The vast majority of the guys hurt were younger players in their 20s. Yeah, Terry had the injury. And Eckler got hurt. And Dietrich Wise got hurt. Those are the older players that got hurt, but most of the old players on the roster were totally fine. Up and running. Every week out there, we were complaining about them getting reps, taking spots from younger guys that we wanted to see on the field. But ultimately, I can't stress this enough. One of the things that I expect, and I've been telling you guys this, and it was so refreshing to hear him say this because it felt like confirmation of what I already thought. But I told you a million times, I have no idea what Adam Peters is going to do. None of us do. And because of that unknown, that's the thing that is a bit nerve-wracking for me. Nerve-wracking, excuse me, for me, is that I don't know. Normally, I can draw inferences. I said we're going to find out a lot about Adam Peters' general manager style this offseason. His general managerial style, because we have no idea. It's 1-1 right now. I think you're going to see him be aggressive and go after younger, more athletically inclined players this offseason. And he talked about it in this particular answer when he was asked about what did you see from this roster? And he said, we need to get younger and faster. This should be music to your ears. You should be smiling ear to ear when you hear your general manager talk about the things that we complained about all off season or all season long, basically. He then was asked about the free agent approach, his free agency approach. And I thought this was one of his most thoughtful. And for me, as a data collector, I told you, I want to find out what his style is. He basically told me what his free agency thought process was the first 2 years. Now, does that shift and change as each year? Yes, each year is its own entity. Of course, it shifts and it changes. Some years you have more money. Some years you have less money. Some years you're coming off of a 12-5 NFC Championship run. Other seasons, you're 5-12, and you're coming off of being one of the worst teams in football. So your strategy is going to shift from season to season. At one point, your roster could be pretty much full. You got almost everything you need. You just need a few players to put you over the top. Other times, you're in the situation that we're in right now where you need a whole lot of shit. So your philosophy is going to shift here and there. But he said, and this is, to me, one of the best answers and one of the most important answers he gave of his press conference. He said, the first year we got here, we went out and we signed a bunch of guys to multi-year deals. He said, and I've explained this to you guys. I said, he hasn't done anything more than a 3-year deal. We haven't signed anybody to a 5-year deal, a 4-year deal. Everything's been 3 years if it's been multi. And everything else was either a 1 or a 2-year deal. And he said that was by design. He said, in San Francisco and other places I've been, he said the biggest mistakes that were made weren't in the draft. They were always free agency moves where we gave deals to guys that we didn't know. And he said they would be 4 or 5-year deals that you'd be stuck with for multiple years after the guy was already gone because you were so disappointed in what that player wasn't. And now you're stuck with dead cap and your flexibility is limited. And he's like, I just saw how that affected other places I had been. And he always had that in the back of his mind, like, unless I feel confident about this guy, not giving him a multi-year deal. Which is why you've seen them be very selective in the players that they've kept here. They've only re-signed a handful of guys here in Washington. Jeremy Reeves has been bought back multiple times, never given like a 3-year deal. It's 1 year and then it was a 2-year. Percy Butler was given a 1-year extension. John Bates was signed this past offseason to a 3-year deal. Sam Cosmi was given the extension last year. And then Terry had to fight tooth and nail to get his extension here. They're not just giving them away to anybody. They let John Allen go. I think they're going to do the same thing to Deron Payne this offseason. They're not just handing these deals out to dudes. You got to earn them, and they got to know who you are, and they got to trust that you are who you say you are, and that you're going to be that for the duration of that contract. And so this year, again, we got distracted by the success of 2024, but he wasn't looking to give out big deals. And he said, for the right price, he said that 3 different times on 3 different occasions during this press conference. For the right price. There were guys that they were interested in. They were interested in Joey Bosa this offseason. They were interested in DeMarcus Lawrence this offseason. They were interested in bringing in Kendrick Bourne this season for the right price. Now, of those 3 guys, the only one that I think they should have just paid the money, bro, was Kendrick Bourne. And I think if you gave AP Truth Serum, he would probably tell you that's the one I probably should have just ponied up and gave up the extra $2-3 million to get him here. Because we needed the help. Jaden needed the help. But he also said that guys like Terry, and this goes to a different answer a little bit later on when he talked about the depth of the wide receiver position. But he talked about, Terry and Noah's injuries being lasting a lot longer than they thought they were going to last this season. And it had they known how long these guys were going to be out and that they would come back and go right back to being injured again, they would have done something. But you can never predict these things, right? So he gave us essentially his thought process behind how he's attacked free agency these first 2 years. I can appreciate that. Gives me, again, I'm collecting data. I thought this was another one of his best answers he asked, he was asked, how can he, which it's a stupid question, but then it's not. When you hear his answer, it makes the question a little bit more digestible, but it's a dumb question because what can Adam Peters do to help Jaden Daniels stay healthy? Like, I hate that question. I hate it with a passion. When anybody asks, like, when you ask Jaden what he can do, when you ask Dan Quinn, what can you do to protect Jaden? You can't do shit. It's football. Players get hurt every day, B. Like, what are we talking about? You could be doing nothing but blocking, minding your business, and somebody roll up on your ankle. What does that have to do with you protecting somebody? It's football. Shit happens. Offensive linemen get hurt every day, B, and they just doing their job. They minding their business. They blocking somebody, and somebody roll up on their damn ankle. How you think Sam Cosmi tore his ACL? It's football, bro. Shit happens. But I loved his answer. He said, the best way I can protect Jaden is to surround him with more talent. He said, I didn't do a good enough job of that this year, and the injuries really robbed us of seeing if I'd done a good enough job. But basically, I can do a better job of getting him running backs that can make plays, getting him an offensive line, which I think they've already done. And he said the Laramie Tunsil thing, and that's literally the next thing. So I'll save that for that conversation. But he said, I love the fact that they spent the resources that they did on the offensive line last year, because we watched Josh Connolly Jr. get better as that season progressed. And I still don't think he's going to ever be elite. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I think he's going to be a damn good right tackle. And for an organization that hadn't spent a first-round pick on an offensive lineman since Brandon Sheriff back in, what was that, 2014 or 2015? Whatever it was. It was good to see them spend the resources to trade the draft capital for Laramie Tunsil, to spend a first-round pick on Josh Connolly Jr., to spend the money on Sam Cosmi, to fortify that 5 in front of him. They've already won half the battle. But he said, we got to do a better job of surrounding him with talent. We got to get him receivers that get open so he doesn't have to hold on to the ball. Hell yes. We got to get him running backs who can make plays. Hell yes. We got to get him tight ends like Zach Ertz. I was like, whoa. But I get it. I understand what he was saying. Like Zach Ertz, who he trusts, that wins for him, that he knows he can get the ball to. And we know that was his safety valve. Anytime Jaden got in the red zone, he was always looking for 86. If Jaden got into a tough spot on a third down, he was always looking for 86. We got to replace that. We got to either go out and get a tight end, or one of these dudes got to step up and become what Ertz was for Jaden. And then he said something that is very important, that a lot of people, when they talk about getting talent around Jaden, they seem to omit this. He said, we got to add defensive talent so that it's not all on Jaden. We can't put everything on his shoulders. We've got to add talent to this roster so Jaden doesn't have to do anything. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. I'm telling you, our general manager I rip and I rhyme. I rhyme and I rip. This is the shit that our general manager spits. He was spitting hot fire today. He was talking that shit. He had his head on his shoulders. I was like, all right, AP, now don't do this shit to me. Don't get me excited and come out here and do some bullshit in the offseason now. He then was asked about Laramie Tunsil, and you knew where this was going, right? They started off the press conference asking him about Terry and his contractual situation. And obviously, did you learn from that situation? And he basically said, he started by talking about Laramie Tunsil. He said, we traded a 2 and 4 for Laramie. We don't have a 2 and a 4 in the draft. And later on in the press conference, he said, I would do that over 10 times over again. Like, he's been everything that we thought he was going to be and then some. I'm so glad we did that. You hate not having a 2nd and 4th, but if you tell me that I'm getting an all-pro, Pro Bowl caliber left tackle, which is one of the premium positions on the football field, for a 2nd and a 4th, man, where do I sign, bro? I told y'all, I hate not having a 2nd and 4th, but to see what I got, like, it'd be a lot different if the 2nd and 4th was spent on Marshawn Lattimore. Then you'd be looking like, ain't that a bitch? We don't have a 2nd and 4th, and this is the shit. No. We don't have a 2nd and 4th, and we got that shit right there. Like, we're set at left tackle. So he's like, yo, I do that 10 times over again. I don't regret that at all. And I said that already. I was like, I don't regret the Laramie Tunsil trade at all. I hate that we don't have a 2nd and a 4th round pick, but do that in a heartbeat again. He said, and Laramie represents himself, which we already knew, but he's got a team of people around him. And he said, I've already been in contact with Laramie and his people. And so there's already a dialogue taking place. Now, this doesn't mean that the Laramie Tunsil deal is going to get done super early, right? Like, they're not going to overcorrect to the point where this thing is done before the start of free agency. But I do believe you will see progress on this deal and a deal reached a lot sooner than the Terry thing from last offseason. I do expect a Laramie Tunsil deal to be done in a timely manner this offseason so that it doesn't interfere with the season like the Terry situation did last year. DQ was asked about coaching Von Miller. Von had a couple of things to say yesterday that the media brought up to DQ, and, you know, there were some DQ isms in there, and DQ got to cheesing. I only bring it up because he started gushing about Von Miller and Laramie Tunsil and their leadership and what they brought to this locker room. He's like, they're two quiet guys, but, you know, when you get to know them and you're in the locker room with them, they bring so much value. And I'm just like, it sounds like you're trying to bring this man back. And I'm like, yeah, you don't really know about that. But again, I told you guys last week when we did our Commanders free agency edition of who to bring back on the fence or pack your bags and go. And I told you I was on the fence with Von. You could convince me that he could be back here, but if you're trying to convince me you're trying to get younger and faster, more explosive, Von Miller isn't necessarily checking those boxes at this point of his career. But, you know, we'll see. Back to Adam Peters. He was asked about the tight end position. So he was like, we don't know when Zach Ertz is going to be healthy. I'm like, why are you talking to me about Zachary Ertz? He's old news. We love Zach, but it's time to move on. He's like, we don't know when Zach will be back, when he'll be healthy, but, you know, we'll have to, you know, see with that situation. I'm like, no, we don't, but I get it. We'll leave all options open, but we'd love to move on. Okay. Had Zach been healthy, might have been a conversation, one that most of us would have been like, yeah, we'd rather do something else. But you could understand them wanting to bring him back because of him still being highly productive. After the injury, I don't know about all of that. We'll see. He then went on to talk about all of the tight ends that are under contract. He talked about Ben Sinnott, John Bates, Colson Yankoff, and then he even extended the conversation to some guys that are on the practice squad or have been on the practice squad this year. So he basically said that they have supreme confidence in all of these guys. They know what Bates is as a blocker, and Bates caught a touchdown on Sunday. Hey, John Bates, John damn Bates. They talked about Colson Yankoff being one of the best special teams players on the roster. Yay, special teams, which I'm not shitting on special teams because I am one of those people that believe special teams is a huge part of the game. But if we talking about a tight end and we talking about helping out Jaden, last thing I really want to talk about is special teams, but I get it. Everybody has a role to fulfill on the roster. Colson Yankoff's more likely than not surrounds and revolves around special teams. And then he talked about Ben Sinnott. And he basically said that, you know, Ben Sinnott was stuck behind. It's the same shit we've heard, stuck behind Zach Ertz, but we think he's got a lot of talent that has yet to be unlocked. And we think he can take a massive step forward this offseason. And then we still have options to weigh, you know, in free agency, the draft, etc., all the things you're supposed to say. And I'm like, hey, man, I was watching a game last night between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. And on a 4th down, with the game on the line, I saw a dude go up and get a football that's going to be a free agent this offseason. If you do your due diligence on him, I'd greatly appreciate it. I'd love to add a guy like that to this roster. You know what I'm saying? So I know that it's not likely, but it would really make me feel good if you did your due diligence. Did you see what I just did there? Maybe you did, maybe you did. I don't know. So I'm going to just be honest with you. I don't think we're going to do anything. I said the same shit last year at the tight end position. I'm not as confident as I was last year. I was pretty confident that we weren't going to do anything at tight end. I'm not as confident this year, but I still am leaning towards I don't think they're going to do anything that's going to make any of us feel really good about the tight end position this year. Anyway, I digress. He then talked about maximizing the draft and free agency. And he said that he wished the NFL did their draft and free agency like the NBA does. So the NBA does their draft first and then free agency thereafter. Because as I've told you before, you build your football team through the draft, you supplement through free agency. I don't really see it as being that big of a deal that it's in the reverse order, because I feel like free agency allows you to know what you need in the draft. So it's just really what's your preference, because if you had the draft first, then you would know what you need in free agency. It's just the reverse of it. Like if you got all these needs going into the draft, then you got a lot of shit that you got to kind of cipher through and figure out what to do. Whereas if you've already handled all of this in free agency, now you can just zero in on specific players and target them in the draft. Again, it could go either way, because you could also look at it from this perspective. You go in the draft, you have all these needs, and you knock them down however they come, best player available, et cetera, et cetera. And then in free agency, you can zero in on specific guys. But you should be doing that anyway in free agency. You should be doing that anyway. And to me, it makes more sense because free agency, there is a cost attached to these players. So your desperation may cause you to overspend for a player because there is no fallback, at least in free agency, because the draft is after. You can be a little bit more reserved with how you spend your money, because while you may be desperate for edge rusher help in a starved market, and there are only 2 guys out there that you really would be willing to pay, you can convince yourself if I don't get one of these two dudes, and I'm not willing to get into no bidding war for them, if the price gets too high, just let them go somewhere else. I can just get one in the draft. I ain't tripping. Whereas if the draft come first and you don't get your guy, now you might be in a position where you got to overspend and overpay for a guy in free agency because it ain't no fallback after this. If you don't get it here, I actually like the way it's done in the NFL. But he said he wished it was the other way around. Anyway, he talked about us having the 7th pick in the draft. And he said that they're going to maximize free agency, the draft. And he said maximizing may look like trading back, picking up some picks, trading out of 7. You know, he said maximizing may look like making some moves in the 3rd round. You may trade back, in the 3rd round, pick up an additional 4th round pick to make up for the fact that to pick up a 4th round pick, rather. You don't have a 4th round pick, right? So you may move back in the 3rd round, still have a 3rd round pick, but just further back in the 3rd round to pick up a 4th round pick that you currently do not have. And so he's like, we're going to maximize free agency, got a lot of money, and the draft. Well, we're going to see what he does. We're going to see what maximizing the offseason looks like for Adam Peters, right? Adam Peters then was asked about he and DQ's relationship. We've heard DQ say this. One of their buzzwords when they first got here was collaborative. And DQ, anytime he's asked any question about Adam Peters and their relationship, and does Adam have input on this and that, and he always uses the phrase collaborative. It's a collaborative approach. When you're talking about the draft, our scouts, Adam Peters, myself, collaborative. And so he was asked about whether or not, and this was a little bit later on in the press conference, we'll get to it, about whether or not he had any input on some of the young guys maybe getting some playing time after the season was pretty much, no longer in question. You gonna let these young boys play or what? And so he gave an example, a couple of examples actually, of what a collaborative approach looks like for Dan Quinn, himself, scouts, etc. So he started with free agency, and he said what a collaborative approach looks like for us is we have our scouts put together a list of free agents that we think would fit what we do here in Washington. Obviously, DQ and his staff have certain criteria that they're looking for players to fit in what they do. Cliff wants certain guys that fit. Remember when Scott Turner was here, he specifically had Ron draft Antonio Gibson. Why? Because he said Antonio Gibson could be his Christian McCaffrey here in Washington. That didn't turn out to be the case. But remember, Antonio Gibson coming out of Memphis was this return running back / wide receiver. So he was supposed to have a skill set that was similar to that of Christian McCaffrey. So you want guys that fit into the scheme and into the things that you do. And so Adam Peters said, our scouts put together a list of free agents that we think fit what our guys are looking for. And then we bring that list and a bunch of cut-ups to the staff, because the staff doesn't have time to parse through all 600 free agents that are available. They don't have time to do that. So they shrink that list down to a nice, let's call it nice, neat 25 players, right? That they think would fit. And they give them the film and they say, hey, watch these guys. Tell me what you think and see if these guys fit what you want to do here in Washington. And if they give them the thumbs up, the green light, they put them on their free agency board and they make those guys priorities to try and go and get them, right? He then talked about the draft. Same approach, right? Can't watch all of these prospects. So the scouts, he said, and he said this is one of his favorite times of the year because now the scouts are coming back to the facility. They've been out on the road all year, compiling all of this data, right? Got all these written reports, and AP's like, now they're going to present us with all these reports on all these prospects. And we're going to start the process of watching these prospects film and seeing what these guys are. And we're going to read these write-ups, and we're going to figure out if these guys fit the Commander standard. And that's how they put together their board. So that's what that collaborative effort looks like. He talked about the wide receiver depth last year and the position overall. And the way the question was phrased, Ben Stanek be asking questions in a way that make you feel like you didn't do your job correctly, right? He's not trying to be an asshole, but it comes off asshole-ish, if you will. Now, the worst question of the press conference came from Scott Abraham, and he usually asks the worst questions because he don't have any couth. He just say shit, right? What do you say to the fan base who wants to know what happened from a 12-5 season to a 5-12? Well, duh, Scott. If they knew that, they would have fixed it. What do you say to the fan base that wants to know what happened? And you can see Adam Peters looking away like, if I could tell him what I really want to say, that would make me smile. But you could tell he was really disinterested with that shit. But Ben asked a real question, and he always does. It doesn't always come off the cleanest, but the intent is always to get an answer that a lot of fans would, like to know. So he asked him about the wide receiver position and the depth or lack thereof. And basically Adam Peters said, obviously, if we had to do it all over again, we probably would approach it a little bit different. But injuries obviously played a major part in the lack of depth. But he said, I learned a lesson about constructing the receiver position. We didn't know that Terry and Noah would be out as long as they ultimately were, right? Like, Noah was out pretty much the entirety of training camp. He was out basically half of OTAs. And he came back and was healthy for basically 2 weeks and then got hurt again. And then he came back for 1 week and then he got hurt again. So, excuse me. They whiffed on Noah, which wasn't a surprise. We had already had the discussion about Noah being a guy that had never been healthy in his NFL career. So why did you think that this would be different? That's the part that struck all of us as like odd. Like, why are you putting all your eggs in the Noah Brown basket? He ain't never been healthy. And then, yeah, the Terry thing caught everybody off guard. But like, we had those conversations. We talked about, hey, Terry just missed all the training camp, right? Like, we could see something like that taking place. And it did. He came back, and the first game he came back, he got hurt again. And so I think if, like I said already, and I can't confirm nor deny this, but I think if he had it to do over again, he would have brought in Kendrick Bourne. But he's like, we tried different approaches, and they did. They weren't the best approaches. Going and getting a guy in Michael Gallup who was out of football the year before isn't necessarily my idea of attacking the receiver position for success. But they did do something, right? KJ Osborne was here. We thought, at least I thought KJ Osborne would be somewhat formidable. And KJ Osborne, after he left here, I don't know where he went, but I didn't hear his name at all. So clearly he didn't work out. He didn't work out in New England before he got here. He didn't work out here. And wherever he went after he left here, he didn't work out. So ultimately, they just whiffed on the receiver position, and the injuries didn't help. And he said all we had were young guys. He said, but on the bright side, if you're looking for a silver lining, we did uncover a guy like Trey Burks due to the injuries, and we think that he's going to have a major impact here moving forward. And so there, some good things did happen because of it. And if you're going to have things happen in a lost season, you want to unearth some gems, and they may have unearthed one that they would not have had they been healthy in Trey Burks. So they're going to upgrade the receiver position. They don't have a choice this offseason. We go to Dan Quinn real quick as we keep bouncing around. On the defensive coordinator decision, DQ basically said that he loves calling the defense, and that even if he brings somebody else in, he is going to be heavily involved. These are his words, quote unquote, heavily involved in the process. Meaning, you just need to call the defense, bro. If that's how you feel, like, I don't want you bringing in an outsider and then hovering over him and not letting him do his thing on defense. And that's not to say that he wasn't very hands-on with Joe Witt Jr. He might have been. But it feels like, and I agree with this mindset. Now, and I think I've said this to you guys already. DQ's, if I were in his shoes, I'm not, but if I were, I would basically be at the point now where if I'm going down with me as the reason why the shit doesn't work, not somebody else. So that's a dangerous place to be, because at least if somebody else is at fault, you can then step in and say, I got it. Like he did this shit. If the shit ain't working and we have better parts that should theoretically be able to get the job done, and you're still failing, now what? So I've already said, if you're going to be a head coach, your specialty is usually on one side of the ball or the other. That side of the ball can't be ass if you're the head coach. Or you got to go. DQ's defense can't be ass again. They were ass in 2024. They were even worse this year, and I didn't think that was possible until he came on board and fixed them, so to speak. There's still the Vikings game that happened, but ultimately, he's got to get this defense turned around. And I think he, in his mind, is saying, if the ship is going to sink defensively, it's going to sink with me as the captain of the yacht. I ain't just going to be on the boat. I'm going to be steering this bitch. And if the ship sinks, it'll be because of me, not because somebody else. So I think he's leaning towards doing this shit himself. But we'll see. Sticking with that subject matter, before we go back to Adam Peters, DQ was asked about whether or not he was willing to bring a fresh face in, or would he be more comfortable with a familiar face? And he went into this whole long diatribe about the game evolving and how much they've had to change over the years and how they've evolved as play callers and how the offensive schemes have changed and how they've had to adjust to that. And I'm like, okay, yeah. All right, we hear you. Yeah. Get to the part where you would be willing to bring somebody else in here that you do not know. You're just familiar with their game, but you're not familiar with them as a person. And you like what you saw from afar, and you want to bring them in. Like you did with Cliff. You didn't actually really know Cliff. You were familiar with this game, and you was like, hey, I had a tough time coaching against this guy. I'd love for him to be on my side. I know the stress that a no-huddle offense puts on a defensive coordinator. I'd love for him to be my offensive coordinator. It's a little bit different when you're a defensive guy and you got to put your pride aside and say, maybe my shit isn't what's really good. What's hot in the streets. It's hard for you to admit that and bring in somebody that's young, new, and innovative and have them bring their shit in here. I just don't see DQ doing that. What was the guy name? What was it? Pedzik? What was his damn name? I'm about to find out what his name was right now. I think it was like Pedzik or Nate Pedzik or Herdzig or some shit like that. Former Arizona Cardinals defensive coordinator. Nope, I had the wrong guy. Nick Rallis is the guy that I would say bring him in here, bro. Nick Rallis, he gets it. I like that dude a lot. Instead of bringing in Jonathan Gannon, who got fired, bring in his defensive coordinator, who he gave a shot to. Who was, look, you can say what you want about Arizona. They defense don't have a lot of elite pieces, and he was getting a lot out of them boys. Let me see, who is this Dave Pedzik guy? Why is his name even? I ain't gonna be able to find because I don't even know who the hell I'm talking about. I don't know where his name came from. Whatever. But that was who I was talking about, Nick Rallis. Like, I can't see DQ going out and saying, I'm gonna bring in Nick Rallis. I just don't feel like something he would do. He would be more comfortable bringing in a Raheem Morris. Somebody he knows that has similar beliefs defensively that he does. It'll make it easier for him to be in the cookie jar. It'll be easy for him to peek his head in there, give suggestions, talk about what he would do if he was calling the plays. Whereas if somebody comes in here with a totally different scheme that he's not really familiar with, I just don't see him doing that. And it doesn't sound like he's interested in doing that shit. His answer didn't instill confidence in me that that's what he's going to look to do. So we'll see. I think he's going to be this team's defensive play caller next year. So then this was one of the lighter moments of the press conference. Adam Peters was basically asked about whether or not he had any input on whether or not DQ should play some of the younger players down the stretch of the season once we were out of the playoff contention. Did he have conversations about maybe putting some of those young guys in, giving them more opportunities? And then Ben Standing even had the audacity, which was still funny, to ask him about tanking and whether or not that he would even suggest to DQ that they lose against Philadelphia in Week 18 for a better draft pick. And Adam Peters' response was, yeah, I told DQ to tank that final game against Philadelphia, and he just didn't listen. And DQ started laughing, and he said, hell no. Which you knew DQ ass wasn't trying to lose. But he said, seriously, we needed to win that game for various reasons. I think what he was thinking about was keeping Philadelphia from getting the 2 seed because we don't want to see them win shit. But he basically said a lot of the reason for guys not playing is they just had, I just struggle with that answer. And obviously him and DQ talk a lot. And so what we hear from DQ is probably some of the things that they've discussed. So he just regurgitated a lot of what DQ has told us all year, which is we got guys in front of these young players that are keeping them off the field. You want more Jordan McGee, but Bobby Wagner's here keeping them off the field. You want more Ben Sinnott, but Zach Ertz is keeping them off the field. And I'm just like, yeah, I hear you, but I ain't trying to hear that shit. And that still doesn't justify Sheldon Day and Jalen Holmes being in over Ricky Barber and Chris Moore and River Craycraft being in over Jacoby Jones and Ja'Cory Brooks. Like like the math ain't mathing. And I know Ja'Cory Brooks was injured, but the math ain't mathing in some of these instances. But I thought another interesting conversation surrounding, and this was asked by our own Candy Waller, our girl Candy from Bowie TV, asked about the two draft classes that Adam Peters has already had, and where did he feel like they were? Were they on schedule? Were they a little bit behind? Are they exceeding expectations? Of course, he's not going to answer this question cut and dry. Like, no, we're a little disappointed in Johnny Newton's production so far, and Ben Sinnott hasn't done anything yet. Like, they're not going to say that, obviously. But Adam Peters basically said, and as a matter of fact, I'll go in order because Dan Quinn jumped at this question first. And he did the whole trajectory thing, right? Like, I wish it was a straight line like this. Right? We've heard that a million times, but he's like, it's up and down, and we've seen some progress from these guys, and we've seen guys do some good things, and then in certain instances they take a step back, but we like where these guys are. We like the growth that we've seen from a lot of these players, and we think a lot of these guys have so much more to tap into, and that's pretty much where Adam Peters picked up the baton and the torch from Dan Quinn. And he basically said, we feel like a number of these guys have another level that they can take their game to. And it's, whether it was because they had another player in front of them that didn't allow them to play more and they didn't get enough opportunities, or, some of the changes because of injuries, whatever the case may be, we feel like these guys have so much more they can tap into. And we feel like these guys are going to be what we drafted them to be. And I like the patience, because so often in today's society, we don't have patience with young players. Everything is right now, got to have it right now. And I grew up in an era where guys got an opportunity 5-6 years to prove that they could or they couldn't. You weren't giving up on players after 2 seasons, calling guys busts after 2 years of service in the league. I saw guys blossom into among the league's best in year 3 or 4 of their NFL careers. Nnamdi Asomugha was not like that when he first was drafted by the Raiders. It took him like 3 or 4 seasons to figure this shit out. And then he became one of the league's best corners. Had they given up on him early in his career, they would have made a grave mistake. Alex Smith was ass his first 4 years in the league. It wasn't until his 5th season that he actually started to play well. In today's NFL, they would have gotten rid of Alex Smith after his 2nd season. They would have benched him. They would have went and got a veteran. They would have drafted a new quarterback. No one has patience anymore. So, look, I don't know if Johnny Newton's going to turn into what we drafted him to be. It doesn't feel like it. But you never know. Year 3, Johnny could be dominant. I doubt it. But we don't know. Could Ben Sinnott really be what they think and they keep telling us he is? Could he actually be that? I don't think he'll be allowed to flourish in Cliff's system. Cliff doesn't love tight ends. He loves Zach Ertz. So I'm not sure that even Ben Sinnott being more athletic than we give him credit for, I don't know if that matters, because in Cliff's system, I don't think he's going to be allowed to shine regardless, which is why I don't know if us going and getting a Kyle Pitts, although Kyle is like a receiver, and I think Cliff might go out of his way to feature a guy like Kyle Pitts. I don't know if us spending money on a tight end is a good use of our resources if Cliff isn't going to get the ball to that guy anyway. Only one way to find out, though. I'd love to try our hand at it and see. So we'll see what this third draft class looks like, and if these first two draft classes continue to grow. I actually think the one that they just drafted, this 25 draft class, has a shot to be everything that they drafted them to be. Josh Connolly is going to be, I think, a really good starter in this league for a long time. I think Trey Amos has the same ability, right, to be a really good starter for a really long time. He feels like a number 2 corner, which is fine. You need 2. He feels like a number 2. It still feels like we need a dog as a number 1. But he feels like a high-end 2. Like, why can't he be our Lassiter in Houston, right? Why can't he be our second-round Lassiter? Lassiter was a second-round pick. Dog. Trey Amos doesn't strike me as that type of dog, but why can't he be that Robin like Lassiter is to the Batman that is Derek Stingley Jr.? We just need a Derek Stingley Jr. Easier said than done, right? Those don't grow on trees. But why can't Trey Amos be a Robin to a Batman? We just got to go find Batman. I've already said that we drafted Jalen Lane to be elite at one thing and one thing only. And anything else is extra. That's being an elite punt returner, and he's already proven that he is that. So he's going to pan out. I felt like this in a moment. Kane Medrano was just a roll of the dice. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, he's Dominique Hampton all over again. It's a 6th-round pick. I'm not tripping. I ain't tripping. And then Bill. I think Bill has some talent. I think Bill has a chance. So the 25 class is, to me, more promising than the 24 class. But we'll see. We'll see. Then they were asked about the depth of the roster. Those answers really didn't move the needle for me. And then I thought this was a really good close to the press conference. Adam Peters was asked about the comparison between his time in San Francisco in 2019, 2020, and 21, that 3-year stretch, in comparison to Washington 2024, 25, and potentially 26. And is there a direct correlation, like a direct apples to apples comparison? Does he feel that in the moment? So just to give you a little bit of background information on what the person asking the question was referring to. In 2019, the 49ers made it all the way to the Super Bowl. Mind you, that whole group came in 2017. So 17, they still were trying to figure it out. 18, they started to turn the corner a little bit. 19, so remember, they first got there and they tried to trade for Kirk Cousins. We were dum-dums, and we didn't want to trade Kirk Cousins because we didn't want to do business with Kyle Shanahan. So instead of getting a first-round pick for Kirk Cousins, we let him walk away for nothing, basically, because we're stupid. We were then. So they later in that 2017 season traded for Jimmy Garoppolo. Remember, he went 5-0 that season as 49er starter to finish up the season. And there was all this hype surrounding Jimmy Garoppolo. And then in 2018, he tore his ACL like in week 3 of that season, missed the entire year. And so Garoppolo came back healthy in 2019. They went to the Super Bowl. The next year, there was all this hype surrounding the 49ers, expecting them to be good again. And then they had all those injuries. And the season flamed out. I think they went 6-10 that year. And then they came back the next year in 2021, fully healthy, retooled. They went back to the Super Bowl. So, or did they go back to the Super Bowl? They might have went to the NFC Championship game. I don't think they went to the Super Bowl. They went back to the NFC Championship game, and they lost to the Rams that year. Anyway, they were basically asking, do you feel the same as you did then now? And he's like, I hope it turns out to be that way. Obviously, I hope it turns out to be that way because 24, we, 12-5 NFC Championship run, all these expectations. The next year, you have all these injuries. He equated the 2020 season to our 2025 in the sense that they had one like brutal game where they sustained all these injuries. I remember it too. And he brought it up when they were in New York. They played the Jets early in the season, like week maybe 4 or 5. And that was when that was at the height of, oh my God, this MetLife turf is the worst. It's claiming, ACLs and Achilles, and it's taking dudes out. And they went there and they lost like 4 guys, including, Nick Bosa in that game. And it was just brutal. And he said it was like the Packers game for us this year, right? We lost so many guys. Jaden got hurt. Noah Brown got hurt. Austin Eckler got hurt. Dietrich Wise got hurt. Like, we came out of that game. It reminded me a lot of, if you recall, back in 2017, that Chiefs Monday night game. Remember, we started off the season 2-1. The Chiefs were undefeated. That was the Josh Doctson incomplete. You thought he caught it, won us the game, and then but he didn't catch it. And then we tied it up, and then Alex Smith took him down the field in like 30 seconds to kick the game-winning field goal. But that night, Terrell Pryor got hurt. Jonathan Allen got hurt. Like 2 or 3 other dudes got hurt. It was like we came out of that game so banged up, and the season just went downhill from there. I think Chris Thompson got hurt that night. It was bad. Anyway, he basically said that our Packers game this year was the Giants game or the Jets game in 2020. And he said he was so proud of that team in 2020 because they had to deal with COVID. And they didn't even remember, if you remember 2020, they didn't even get to finish their season at home. They had to play their home games in Arizona. It was because they couldn't play NFL games in Santa Clara. The Santa Clara wasn't allowing them to play there. So he's like, I hope that we turn it around like that 49ers team did the next year. That's all we can hope for, is that we turn it around and get back to being a really good team. So that was basically the press conference. I left the press conference as a fan feeling really good, feeling like he said all the right things. Like, if he came in here and just been, giving us the whole, man, we got injured, and, that would have made me feel like he's Bruce Allen. Like, we're damn close type bullshit, and he didn't give me that. He didn't give me those vibes. Like, now we got some shit that we got to work on. We got some shit to do. We got to get younger. We got to get faster. We got to get, more dynamic. We got to upgrade some positions. We got to surround Jaden with talent. We can't ask 5 to do it all by himself. He said all of the right things. Now it's about execution. Now it's about going out and doing that, getting the players that are going to not serve as a conversation, but be about that action, boss. That's what we need to see. And he made me feel good. I'm not going to lie to you. It feels like Adam Peters got his head on his shoulders. And I've already said this. DQ is not an elite coach. I think we found that out this year. And we probably already knew that to a certain extent. But we were all giving DQ praise after 2024. But 25 showed some of his flaws. I still think he's a good coach. I just think he has to have elite talent or enough good talent in order for him to maximize who he is as a coach. He doesn't uplift meager talent. Above average talent lifts him up. So Adam Peters has to go get the type of roster that's going to allow DQ to be the best version of himself. Big offseason. Nothing has changed in that regard. It's a big, ginormous offseason for the Adam Peters, Dan Quinn conglomerate in Washington. I'd say the end of the season press conference was a success. It's a good start. Maybe the win against Philadelphia is a good start to 2026 for them. They needed that breath of fresh air heading into the offseason. Now let's see what they do with it. We'll take a quick break, get a word from our sponsor, come back on the other side, and we've got some Commanders news and notes to tackle, including some future contracts and our 2026 list of opponents. Stay tuned. Sleeper. Sleeper is the best way to experience and connect over sports together. It's a one-stop shop for all of your sports needs. You can celebrate and chat in the games in real time with other users, get the fastest scores, blazing fast news and alerts right at your fingertips. Play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So enjoy sports the way they were meant to, together. Download the #1 sports app today. Predict the hottest football stats like passing yards, receiving yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and much more to cash in on your daily fantasy football skills. Use promo code LTN and Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. Sleeper. All right. So let's get to in other news for the final time of the 2025-26 edition of Commanders Nightly News. And we first take a look at the Commanders signing players to some future reserves contracts. So these are some names that you know, some others that you don't know, but basically how this works is these are guys that were on the practice squad at the end of the season, on other teams' practice squads at the end of the season, guys that may have been free agents that you want to sign to future contracts. Obviously, nothing can go in effect now because the new league year has not started. But what you can do is essentially get these guys under a contract that will go in effect at the start of the new league year. So that's why it's called a futures contract. Okay. So a lot of these names we know because they were on the Commanders practice squad, meaning they want to continue working with these players. They're going to make up that 90-man roster that they're going to have during the offseason for OTAs, mini camps, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, they're going to add more names to that list as they continue to fill out the roster via free agency, the draft, undrafted rookies, et cetera, et cetera. That said, here are the 11 guys that they signed to futures contracts at the end of the game yesterday. This guard, not even going to try to say his name, but they brought him in about a week and a half ago when we had all those injuries after the Cowboys game. Jalen Lane got hurt, or the Eagles game, excuse me. We had a bunch of injuries after the Eagles game. Jalen Lane got hurt. Tyler Biadasz got hurt. We had a number of guys go down. And basically, that prompted them to sign a bunch of dudes, right? He was among them, so they're going to bring him back. Ricky Barber was on our practice squad all year, got an opportunity. What did I tell y'all? I said Ricky Barber won't see the light of day against the Philadelphia Eagles in the finale because Daron Payne will be back. Like, that's the shit I'm talking about, but whatever. Ricky Barber is going to be brought back. He got an opportunity. He got a sack in the one game that he played in, had three tackles, including another tackle for loss among those three tackles. So they want to continue to work with him. He was an undrafted out of UCF last year. Wide receiver Ja'Cory Brooks, we talked about him all offseason last year. He was one of the guys that got a ton of reps in the summer because we were so decimated by injuries over the life of the summer in training camp that he was taking reps with the ones. When we went to New England for the joint practice, Ja'Cory Brooks was running with the ones. Then we get to the regular season and the injuries hit and Ja'Cory Brooks is nowhere to be found. But they want to continue to work with him. He's going to get an opportunity to be back here, and maybe, just maybe, he'll take a step forward and actually be a part of the mix in 2026. Trey Hawkins is the guy that they brought in here probably about a month to a month and a half ago. The former Old Dominion University corner has, some length, some size on him, 6'3", corner that they're going to continue to work with. And so interested to see if he has anything. This is the thing. One of the positions that I was so disappointed that we didn't have young, youthful guys that you could, like, corner and receiver are two positions, in my opinion, that you should always have some young developmental guys on your roster at. Corner and wide receiver are two, and it's not hard. There's so many receivers, there's so many corners out there that don't get drafted, that are, just looking for an opportunity. You got to find guys, man. So I'm happy that they got a couple of names up here. Darius Rush is another one out of South Carolina that has been here for a little while now. That I want to see if these guys develop, because I don't feel good about Carlin Biggers. None of us do after watching him last year. Doesn't mean he can't improve. The thing that I didn't like is something that I don't know if you can fix. He doesn't want to hit anybody. He clearly doesn't like the physical aspect of football. I can't get jiggy with that shit. So DJ Johnson, he's a new name. Don't know him. See if anything comes of that. Jacoby Jones, I was banging the table on why isn't Jacoby Jones getting another opportunity? Had the big catch against the Dolphins over in Madrid, and then was promptly cut after the game to make space for some roster moves, brought back onto the practice squad, but never was elevated again the rest of the season. Never made any sense. TJ Mag is going to be back. Makes a ton of sense there. He's still in the IPP. Rob McDaniel. So Robert McDaniel was a safety out of Jackson. Was it Jackson State, I believe? Undrafted. He's the guy that I thought would be the Jeremy Chin replacement. We'll see if they can get anything out of him this offseason. And then Tim McKay is the guy that they spent the most money on last offseason as an undrafted free agent. Tim McKay was the guy that would have been probably a mid-round pick, but he tore his pec in the pre-draft workouts and ended up going undrafted out of NC State. So they clearly want to continue working with him. And then I mentioned Darius Rush, South Carolina corner, and Carlin Biggers already. And we know Carlin Biggers from last year's group of undrafted free agents that they signed. So these are the futures contracts. We'll see if they make any other moves to the roster as we prepare for the offseason. And then these are our opponents. Now that we've officially got our records, everyone has their records. We know where everyone stands within the divisions. Now we have our opponents for the upcoming season. As you can see, we got more home games this year than away games. It fluctuates every other year. You get more home games than away games. This year we had more away games. Last year we had more home games. Next year we're going to have more home games. So 9 home opponents. Obviously the 3 in the division. Seahawks are coming back here again, returning to the scene of the crime where they splattered our brains all over the FedEx, the Northwest field in November, hoping for a different result this time around. Rams are coming to town. I don't know if Matthew Stafford will still be there. I'm assuming he's going to still be playing. He's probably our league MVP this year. So my guess is he'll be back next year. Texans, that defense, wow. They'll be coming to FedEx, to Northwest Stadium. Colts will be a home opponent. So we're playing the AFC South next year, which is usually a good thing because that division usually stinks. But now all of a sudden the Colts could be good, the Texans are good, and the Jags are really good. So who knows if that will work out for us or not. Bengals will be coming to Northwest as well as the Atlanta Falcons. We play the Falcons every single year. It doesn't matter. No matter what happens, the Falcons always finish in the same spot as us, leading to us having to play them during the regular season. My gosh, this is what, 5 years in a row now? We finished in 3rd place. They finished in 3rd place. Crazy. All right. Last year, we finally got away from them. We finished in 2nd place in the division. They finished in 3rd. But because we played the NFC South this year, or wait, I lied. We finished in second. They finished in second. That's how we played them again, because we played the NFC North this year. Packers, Bears, Lions, and Vikings. Can't ever get away from Atlanta. Home away opponents. The three in the division, of course, Vikings. So we got to go to Minnesota again. We went there this past year. It didn't go well. And we haven't won in Minnesota in forever. I forget what the last time we won there was, but it's, yeah, and we just got shut out there. San Francisco 49ers. So we'll have to take a trip out to the site of the Super Bowl. Jacksonville Jaguars. These are some really harmless away games. Like, this is a good setup. Jacksonville is usually a sterile environment. Arizona has usually been pretty good to us, or at least over the last couple times. It used to be a house of horrors for us, but Arizona is usually not that tough of a place to play. Tennessee is not a hard place to go and try to win a game. San Francisco and Minnesota will be tough, though. They will be tough. So this is actually a really good away schedule if you're into that type of thing. But we got some tough home opponents. But I'd rather play the tough games at home than play them on the road. So those are your 2026 opponents. We don't know when we will play these opponents, but we do know where we will play these opponents. So have at it. All right. Now let's get to the comment section, and then we will get out of here. So video channel starts us off. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, video channel writes, Lou, video channel. AP was sounding like you. Need him young, athletic, and freaky. Hey, chill, man. He ain't say nothing about freaky. All right. He ain't say nothing about freaky. But me and AP, we thinking the same. We thinking the same. Gotta improve the youth of this roster, man. Can't come back with the same shit we just had. It's just not gonna cut it. I heard your jokes, video channel. I heard your jokes. Rosario Sitar Poleski, or Polesky. Polsky. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, thanks for another season of commentary. Thank you for another year of support. Getting ready for my second book event this spring. That is so awesome. I've loved the growth that I've seen from you, and you coming out of your shell. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, man. Continue grinding. I love it, and I'm gonna continue to support it, man. So shout out to you for all that you have accomplished and continue to grow. CJ, been a member for 52 months. Celebrate! Who writes, disappointed in 2025, but still optimistic for 2026. As am I. I mean, who wouldn't be disappointed in 2025? But we start anew. All we got to do now is make sure that the Philadelphia Eagles aren't playing any meaningful football here over the next couple weeks. And then we can really get ready for the start of 2026. So we did our part. We made sure they didn't get the 2 seed because the Bears couldn't do their part. So we had to jump in the mix. I'm a lot more optimistic today than I was yesterday after listening to Adam Peters speak. A lot more optimistic. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, would love what the Bears have as their OC as our new DC. Declan Doyle is 28, and Ben chose him because he's a workhorse to do the late nights while Ben focuses on the overall team and play calling. You need need fiends and nerds. That's what I'm talking about. Young guys that are dedicated to the program. That, and I'm not saying that Cliff and all these guys aren't, because Cliff is absolutely all in. But I'm talking about dudes that this is all they got, man. Football, this is it. They sleep, breathe, eat this shit, bro. Young savants. I just, that's not what you're going to get under DQ. I can assure you of that. You want that kind of young prodigy type of guy, you got to go get a younger coach. This is what you got to understand. With coaches, they going to hire people that they're comfortable and familiar with. DQ said today at his press conference, he was thankful for meeting a guy like Tavita Pritchard or Bobby Ingram that he didn't know previously, but got here. Those guys were already here, and he was impressed with them, and so he kept them here. But make no mistake about it, he brought his boys with him. He brought Joe Witt Jr. with him. He brought former players like Daryl Tapp with him, guys that he was comfortable with, right? William Gay. He brought those dudes here because he knows them. He wanted to bring more guys with him, and Dallas shut him down and told him no. You want younger coaches, you got to have a young head coach. So I just don't think it's going to happen here. But I can't tell you not to dream. John Perez, my guy JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, my ideal offseason would be a Tunzel payday, drafting edge and safety, signing a cornerback, and signing a running back. Breece Hall, Rachaad White, or Algier would be great. Rachaad White is on a Commanders campaign right now as we speak. I don't know if you guys have seen what he's doing on social media. Obviously, he and Jaden attended ASU together. They're really good friends. They swapped jerseys in Jaden's first ever NFL game. Rachaad White is a free agent. The Bucs, I don't think, have any interest in bringing him back. He clearly wants to be a Commander and team up with his best bud, Jaden Daniels. I wouldn't be shocked. He feels like the move at the running back position. And I think he and Bill would make a hell of a 1-2 punch. He feels like a cheaper option as opposed to Breece Hall or K9, who are going to cost you money. Algier also would fit in that Rachaad White role in terms of how much it's going to cost you. White is more versatile, though. He can catch it out of the backfield, much better pass catcher than Algier, or Breece can catch it too, right? But anyway, Rachaad White feels more like what they would do than Breece Hall or K9. But yeah, that's a pretty good offseason, JP. Tunzel getting paid is going to happen. Drafting an edge and a safety feels like something that will happen. Edge is definitely going down, whether it's a free agent acquisition or draft E. They're going to add edge to this team. Safety, I hope so. One can only hope. I feel like they're going to sign a corner. I feel like that's going to happen. And I feel like running back, they got to do something there. But again, we'll see. That's a good overall offseason, though, JP. DP Unit, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, what's the name of the product you were advertising months ago that helps after drinking with hangovers? Tried to send you a message on IG asking about it. Oh, it's called Z-Biotics. Z-Biotics. And you can still use my promo code. As a matter of fact, I'll drop the link in the description right now for you. Let me Let me go and retrieve that for you right now. So while I do that, I'm gonna drop it in the chat for you. But let me go to the next comment while I'm looking it up. Yoshi, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Yoshi, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, "Hey Lou, I know you saw that Rashad White fiasco. Nobody in the world want to play for the Commanders more than Ayuk and Rashad. Got to be the 5 effect." Yeah, 5. He's got gravity, bro. He's got gravity. We've basically seen dudes doing everything in their power to make it to Washington and link up with their boy. It's crazy. I wouldn't advise guys to go about it the way that we've seen some of these dudes do it, but and again, Ayuk's situation is so bad that it might end up being counterproductive. I don't know if he really wanted to play football anyway. I'm gonna just be honest with you. I'm not sure that Brandon Ayuk ever really truly wanted to play football because the way he conducted himself, if you really wanted to play football, you wouldn't be doing the shit that he's doing. So I'm not sure about him anymore. But Rashad White, I don't know how long him and Jaden have been his profile pic, but he out here liking every single post that got anything to do with him coming to Washington and linking up with Jaden. Like he out here thirsty as hell. I know that much. That's for damn sure. So it feels like he's trying to campaign, and if he's got a chance, like you know how sometimes like Zach Ertz did this last year where he told his agent, "Hey, I don't want to go nowhere else but Washington. So you don't really got to talk to none of these other teams. If Washington offers me a deal, that's where I want to go. I want to come back here." It feels like that's what he's on, right? Like, hey, figure it out. Get me to Washington. I don't really want to go nowhere else. See what they offering me. And if it's even comparable to what some of these other teams are offering me, get me a deal to go there. That's what it feel like he on. I could be wrong, but he seemed like he on that type of time right now. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting. So we'll see. It feels like he's a guy that is going to end up here based off of the price. Because AP, as I mentioned multiple times, he mentioned, he mentioned the right price. Like he's not out here going to be spending copious amounts of money on dudes. And he basically broke down his free agency philosophy. So I just dropped that link in the chat for you. I don't see him overspending in free agency on like certain positions. He said if the right player at the right price shows up, he doesn't mind giving out multi-year deals. And he's proven that already. Javon Kinlaw was the right player at the right price for them last year. It felt like an overpay for some of you, but for them, it was the right player at the right price. He was going into the prime of his career. They liked him. And Javon played well for us this year. He played well for us this year. Rashad White is a guy that I think is going into the prime of his career. And he wasn't a guy that was a workhorse in Tampa. So it's not like a ton of tread or off those tires. And he'd be coming here and it'd probably be a 2-back system anyway. And he's not going to cost you a lot. Not like Breece Hall. Breece Hall talking about 12, 13 million a year. I don't think Adam Peters trying to spend that kind of money on a running back. So anyway, I digress. We'll see what happens. But yes, it's the effect of 5. I agree. 5 out here. That gravity is something else, man. He's got a gravitational pull that's unlike any we've ever seen before. Loser, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Loser writes, looking at the schedule, AP need to have he needs to have the best offseason of his career. That's a hell of a schedule. It's a hell of a schedule. We need a hell of a schedule. We need a hell of a offseason. But that was without even seeing the schedule. We already said this is a big offseason for Adam Peters. Just getting 5 back healthy and then adding pieces around him is going to give us a shot to compete. But if you want to win and thrive, that'll give us a chance to survive. We won't be bleeding out on the operating table like we did this year. Getting 5 back healthy and adding pieces will give you a chance to survive. If you want to thrive, he's got to absolutely kill it this offseason. Kill it. Draft picks have to hit. Free agency has to be fruitful. And then the guys that you drafted in 24 and 25 have to take steps forward and be key contributors. Mr. Ron B, OG triple OG. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, Happy New Year, Lou. Likewise, Mr. Ron B. Since we already know one of our home games will be abroad, the Bengals seem to be the likely opponent. Agree? I don't know. Jim. You could be right. The last time we played, before the Dolphins game, obviously, last time we played abroad, it was against Cincinnati. So would they want to run that one back? Just taking a look at the opponents. Let's do that real quick. I could see Houston being that game. Indy is always a game that nobody is really interested in. It seems like Indy is over there all the time. They were just over there for Atlanta over in Germany this year. So Indy's always an opponent that could go abroad. I don't think it's going to be the Rams. I don't think it's going to be the Falcons. And then don't count out the NFC East games. Don't rule those out. Remember what they did. And I don't think they're going to do this, but remember what they did with the Chargers and Chiefs this past year in Brazil. Now, the Eagles already did Brazil. So I don't see them having the Eagles do that. But they could do the Giants and Commanders in Brazil week 1. We just played them week 1. I don't think they're going to do that. Could be Cowboys. Or it could be none of those NFC East teams. And we could not be playing in Brazil. And we could be playing in England somewhere. And it could just be one of these Indy, Houston, Cincinnati types. I think if you're going to go Brazil, then it's got to be somebody, a heavy hitter. It's got to be a Dallas, Philadelphia, Seattle, something like that. Giants. That's a good one. If I were a betting man, Mr. Ron B, I would tell you that Cincinnati would be the favorite of those 9 teams that we have at home. So, yeah, I think the Bengals would be the odds-on favorite to be the opponent abroad. Because at least in that scenario, if you do it, and I mean, shit, there's no guarantee Joe Burrow's going to be healthy. But if, like, once there was no Jaden, there was no fallback. There was no star attraction this past time. Even if there's no Jaden, you'd still have Joe Burrow. There'll still be an attraction. You'd still have a guy. You still have Jamar Chase. You still have enough, star power to fall back on. There was nothing in that Madrid game once there was no Jaden. Nothing. They were still excited. They don't know any better, but it was nasty. All right. So that was the last super chat, which means it is time for me to exit stage left. So for the final time of the 2025-26 regular season, the Commanders Nightly News is going to come to a close. I thank you guys for making this the most successful season of Commanders Nightly News. I look forward to doing this again next year, bringing it back and making it better than ever. We've got a hell of an offseason ahead of us, and the Command Post will be taking over where Commanders Nightly News leaves off. So all of your news, Commanders related content will be in the form of the Command Post live. And so for the final time this year, or the final time in this raggedy regular season that we just endured, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. See you guys next time. God bless. Good night.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap. Hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35. The 30.